Our guest is Ben Johnson. He's with LifeSite News, and they have been doing a fabulous job of following this story incredibly close. Of course, they are no stranger to being called extremist and being attacked and all of this other stuff, simply for reporting the truth on what this organization is doing. Ben, thanks for joining me. And you know, I wasn't expecting the fourth video today. I'm glad it's out, particularly after Planned Parenthood and STEM Express tried to engage in lawfare with Center for Medical Progress yesterday. So I was happy to see that this video came out. And I talked to David Daleiden yesterday, Ben, and he was saying that they're going to get these videos are going to get progressively worse. And boy, he wasn't kidding.
Well, he's right about that. And as he mentioned, he's got this is an investigation that took 30 months in a row. They penetrated very deeply into the heart of Planned Parenthood as an organization, into the deep inner black heart of Planned Parenthood, if you will. And they have dozens or hundreds of hours of videotape, 9 videos, and that means there are 8 more to go. And each one, as you say, is getting progressively worse and worse. This one, says that not only are they the products of infanticide, sometimes the children are born before the so-called abortion procedure would take place. On a living baby outside the womb, but they very regularly see the brain and so on. They're able to determine sexual organs. It's very gruesome.
Yes, and I want to go back to what you just said there as well, because this doctor that is featured in this fourth video, this was also something that they had denied. She admitted on video that she was saying, well, they're still potentially alive, whatever that means. I don't know. I mean, Ben, you've been covering this for a long time. Do you have any idea what the whole phrase potentially alive means?
The same thing as valuable consideration. They're doing their best to avoid this by dancing around with legal language. It's sort of like, when you watch these discussions back and forth where they're clearly dickering over price, they always preface it by saying, we don't want to make any money. Sort of like the politician who goes out with a businessman and says, I can't guarantee anything, but I do have a son who needs a job. These sorts of quid pro quos are being woven in. So she's simply trying to evade the reality, which she admits very clearly that you have a child who is alive outside the womb and who is being aborted, something that Barack Obama, when he was a state senator, said should be legal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, she says in the video, quote, sometimes if someone delivers before we are able to see them for a procedure, then we are intact, she says very carefully, which is, of course, it's a lot of semantics with saying, well, yeah, we take them while the baby is still alive. That's how we're able to get them so intactfully. I mean, which is horrific. And they had denied doing that after the first video came out because and that was what Dr. Deborah Nucatola, their medical director, had stated. She was discussing mimicking those partial birth abortion techniques, which have been banned since 2003. There's no way they can spin this, Ben.
Well, and this, I think, violates at least 2 separate federal laws, or 3, really. In addition to trafficking in fetal organs, Dr. Deborah Nucatola, as you mentioned, very clearly stated that they perform partial birth abortions. The procedure that she describes is very clearly partial birth abortion outlawed in 2003 by President Bush. And then the Infants Born Alive, Unborn Protection Act. Unborn Infants Born Alive Protection Act, let me try that again, is another one that they're violating. Essentially what she is admitting, Dr. Savita Gindi is admitting on film that Planned Parenthood makes hundreds of dollars per child, sometimes by performing live dissections on living children.
Yeah, it is absolutely horrific. They discuss too, later on in the video what they would get for what they would get for this specimen and that specimen. Just I don't even know if it's just the lack of regard for humanity, and especially towards the end where gruesomely in the video you can hear the skull of a child crack as they're going through and looking for any sort of neural tissue, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the doctor, she says, oh, it's a baby. Like, you're just now admitting this? And then they say it's a boy. Ben, how does a clump of cells have a gender, have a sexuality already?
Well, I think that's the biggest payoff for these videos is that it's waking up so many Americans about the reality of abortion. For decades, ever since before I was born, when I could have been aborted myself, Planned Parenthood has been saying that a child's nothing but an undifferentiated glob of cells,
right,
a little piece of pink tissue inside the womb. And now we're seeing it's very valuable tissue that can be harvested, harnessed, and sold for Planned Parenthood for blood money. And quite often, These are being performed either with state Medicaid money in some cases or with federal Title X money going to Planned Parenthood, not financing the abortion, but freeing them up so that they have the resources to perform these sorts of sick procedures.
Right. And with this, we've been discussing as well how Congress needs to act on this. And not just Congress, but this is something that the 2016 candidates, all of these Republican primary candidates, this should be a cornerstone of all of their speeches and remarks coming up. Actually, no, the keystone of all of their speeches and remarks coming up. And you have, in fact, an article that published today that involves one particular 2016 candidate from Florida, Jeb Bush. In fact, you write that he was the director of philanthropy that funded Planned Parenthood's global abortion advocacy. Give us some insight into this.
Well, it's a disappointing story, to say the least. Jeb Bush teamed up with Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City, the Democrat turned Republican turned independent, when he formed the Bloomberg Philanthropies in 2010. Jeb was one of the founding directors, along with Cory Booker and Sam Nunn and several other distinguished individuals. One of the things that Bloomberg Philanthropies is dedicated to is so-called reproductive health around the world. When the left uses the term reproductive health, that means abortion. And there's a $50 million grant in which Bloomberg Philanthropies teamed with Planned Parenthood Global. And they say very clearly, in part, they fund abortion providers. I found that through going through their 990 statements. There's more than $1 million given to a group called Engender Health, which is an abortion provider in Tanzania. And yet another $250,000 grant for Marie Stopes, which is sort of like the Planned Parenthood provider of the rest of the world. And then they're advocating very clearly. They say that they want Planned Parenthood to train local activists in 4 countries that have somewhat more restrictive abortion laws than the West, and they want them to advocate for loose abortion laws. When you get into their internal documents, what they really want is what they have in Canada or other places, which is unlimited abortion on demand, paid for by taxpayers, in places like Nicaragua, where people have a very clear faith issue against providing such a thing. Most Americans are against this, let alone people in even more faithful countries than the United States, where that's a driving part of their being. But Jeb Bush was a director on this board for almost 5 years. He was compensated, made $37,000 as a result of being there. And when he was asked about it, his spokesperson said, Mr. Bush and Mr. Bloomberg have certain differences, but directors don't sign off on every individual grant. Well, so what? It makes no difference. What that tells me is either that he's willing to be a part of this, or at a minimum, their general simpatico relationship on immigration and education outweighs his being involved in the sorts of things we saw in today's video.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, boy, a lot of things for which he needs to answer. Ben Johnson, U.S. Bureau Chief of LifeSiteNews.com. You can also catch him on AFR, the network. He hosts Nothing But Truth. Ben, thanks so much for your good work, and we appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Yeah, this is absolutely horrific. And I have more, by the way, from my interview yesterday with David Daleiden, because these are and this dovetails into, and I'm going to wait because I'm going to let him ask it, what one of our callers is particularly asking about in terms of, well, how long has it been going on?